Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. Ferrer, your professor in research in social studies. Our topic this morning is on the questionnaire and observation as modes of gathering data. First, we're going to define questionnaire. This is a list of planned written questions related to a particular topic with corresponding space provided for indicating the response to each question. And this is intended for submission to a number of persons for their reply. And this questionnaire is commonly used in normative survey studies and in the measurement of attitudes and opinions. This is according to Good in 1972. So, questionnaire are but set of questions which, when answered properly by your respondents, will supply the necessary information that will complete your research study. As mentioned earlier, this questionnaire is good for researches which is more on survey. Now, if you opt to use a questionnaire as your manner of as your instrument in gathering your data, then here are the advantages. First, a questionnaire is easy to construct. Since you are very familiar now with your research, then it will be very easy for you to construct your questionnaire. And also, the distribution of your questionnaire is easy and inexpensive, particularly if your respondents can be found in a cluster or can be found in one location. Then another advantage is that responses to the questionnaire are easy to tabulate because in the questionnaire itself, options are being provided for your respondents to select. Then another is that the respondents' replies are free since they have the time to read and understand what was being asked in the questionnaire. Then they can think of their responses freely. Another advantage is that confidential information may be given freely by your respondents since they are confident that their anonymity is secured by the researcher. So it is advised that giving the identity of the respondent should be made optional for them to protect their anonymity. Then the respondents can fill out the questionnaire at will since they are free to answer the instrument. Then they will not be, and they can even do it in their own convenient time. So filling out the questionnaire is at their own free will. And given the advantages above, the respondents can give more accurate responses because they have their own time to provide enough responses to the questions which are being asked in the instrument. However, even if the use of questionnaire poses several advantages, and yet there are also disadvantages as far as the use of this instrument is concerned in gathering your data. Of course, one of these is that the instrument cannot be used with those respondents who cannot read or write. And another is there will be a greater chance that your respondents will not return the filled out questionnaire, especially if they prefer to answer the instrument at their own convenient time with the promise of sending it back to you in their most comfortable ways. And another disadvantage is that wrong information cannot be corrected since you're no longer with them to check their answers while they are answering the questionnaire, or because of their anonymity, you cannot easily identify the respondents who answer the specific instrument. And chances are there are some questions which may be left unanswered by your respondents. And one thing more, questions which are vague on the part of the respondents may be left unanswered because they can no longer ask you while they are answering the instrument. Or another thing is, your respondents might have the tendency to introduce bias in their answers, since knowing that they will not be known to you, or you cannot identify whom the respondents who answer the questionnaire. Now let's proceed to the type of questions. We have one, the free answer type. This is a question that you can introduce in your questionnaire, which is in an open form, an open-ended, or sometimes it's subjective. It's unrestricted, or any form of essay, in unguided response types of questions. Then the second is the guided response type. This is actually a closed form or restricted type, such as under this guided response, you have recall type, wherein your respondents have to recall what was being asked in the questionnaire, such as the age, sex, or date of birth, or any data that they will just recall. Then the second kind is the recognition types. Under this is the dichotomous type, wherein only two options are being provided and one is to be selected, such as in the question, are you married? So they are going to choose either of options like yes or no. Then another type is the multiple choice, where only one answer is chosen from the options provided in the questionnaire. And the third one is the multiple response type, where two or more options may be chosen, such as in the example, why do you use toothpaste? So the respondents might choose more than two or more options in the following items, such as it prevents tooth decay, it is cheap, or it freshens the breath, or it is imported in other options that you might provide in your instrument. Then another type is according to form. So under this you have descriptive data, such as question like, what kind of house do you live? So they have to check either it's concrete, it's bamboo type, or it's semi-concrete, or others as one of the options. Or a quantified or numerical data, such as how old are you? So they're going to answer their in numerical form. Or if the question is more with intensity of feelings or emotion or attitude, such as question like, do you agree to have only one election? So they have choose. Chances are you have these choices, such as strongly agree, agree, fairly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. Then another is in the degree of judgment, such as how serious is the problem of drug addiction or smoking. So options might include very serious, serious, fairly serious, not serious, or not a problem. Or if you're going to ask about their understanding of a certain issue, like explain what democracy is, or if you want to have the reasoning on a certain issue, like why do you prefer democracy to dictatorship? So I have here some guidelines in the formation of your questions in your questionnaire. One is you have to make all directions clear in your questionnaire. Then, of course, make sure that you use correct grammar. And another is you have to make all your questions unequivocal, or meaning questions should only give one single meaning. And avoid asking biased questions from your respondents. And make sure to objectify your responses. And make sure that all your questions are related to the topic under study. And if there is a need to do this, you have to create categories or classes for appropriate answers. And don't forget to group your questions to logical sequence. And make sure to create a sufficient number of response categories in your options. And another is you have to word carefully or avoid questions that deal with confidential or embarrassing information from your respondents. So you have to word your question carefully so that your respondents will not feel ashamed or embarrassed in answering your questions. And another is explain and illustrate difficult questions. And make as many questions as would supply adequate information for the study. Remember, you are no longer with them when they answer your question, so therefore you have to make sure that your question will supply enough information for your study. And please add a catch-all word or phrase to options of multiple response questions like others. No, that is, we call that a catch-all word or phrase to options. No, so if you use that others, make sure to include specify. And please state all questions affirmatively. You have to refrain from using negative questions in your instrument. And another A is you have to place all the spaces for the replies at the left side of your instrument. And last is make sure that you make the respondents anonymous. So that would be for the questionnaire. Then next we have for observation. Okay, now let's discuss observation. First, we're going to define what observation is. This is perceiving your data through the use of the senses. And among these senses, the sight is the most important and the most used among those senses, as I said earlier. So why there's a need to use observation as another mode of gathering data from your respondents? One of the purposes is to enable the researcher to gather empirical or observed data which are difficult to obtain by other means. When we say other means, this might include interview or the use of questionnaire. So there are times where data cannot be obtained using other mode of gathering data. That's why observation is recommended to be used by the researchers. Second is to gather sufficient data to supplement or verify information gathered by other means. Sometimes there are chances where your respondents might not tell the exact or the sufficient answers to your questions using interview or questionnaire. So if you wish to supplement or to verify those information, then you may use observation. Then the third is to enable the researcher to gather information needed to describe the aspect of a variable being studied which cannot be described accurately without observation. This is particularly true if you are trying to collect or gather data regarding behaviors or how people live in a certain community or how they practice some beliefs. So this cannot be sufficiently answered using interview or the use of questionnaire. So there's a need for you to use observation to supplement or as much as possible to gather all necessary data for your research. And then another is to enable the researcher to gather directly primary data for more accurate description or interpretation, since it is you who directly observe how your data is being performed or being provided to you by your respondents. Then it is more accurate. You can have more accurate description or interpretation of those data. Now let's have the types of observation. We have the participant, the non-participant, and the structured observation. So this participant observation is not conducted where the observer takes active part in the activities of the group being observed. This is where the researcher lives and works with the group for a certain length of time until he learns the ins and outs of the aspect or aspects he is studying about. This is particularly true with ethnographic researches where the researchers have to live with the respondents. The second is the non-participant observation. This is done where the observer is a mere bystander observing the group he is studying about. So the researcher will just observe how things are happening within the group where data were being collected. He does not participate in the activities of the group. And the third is the structured observation, where it concentrates on a particular aspect or aspects of the variable being observed, be it either a thing, a behavior, a situation, or a condition. So in a structured observation, there is a standard tabulation where items to be observed are usually specified. So this is particularly used in a non-participant observation. So using this observation as mode of gathering data has its own advantages also. First, it gathers directly first-hand information. So as what I am saying earlier, using this mode of gathering data will give you first-hand information. Another is you can observe subjects for as long as you need the time to observe, and that will give you enough time to gather necessary data for your research. And another advantage, it is a superior technique of collecting information from non-verbal behavior in inanimate objects. So by using observation, then you can even collect data which are being shown through non-verbal behavior, or you can even include inanimate objects that are present in the locale or that are being used by the respondents in the topic that you are conducting. And another is the subject of the study can be observed in their natural setting. So you can avoid some pretensions of your sources of data since you are observing them in their natural setting. However, given those advantages, there are also some disadvantages in using this in collecting your data. One is observation lack is or lack of control upon extraneous variables or those that can give some causes and effect to your variables. Another is a smaller size of sample if the universe covers a wide area. Since you cannot observe all of your respondents, so you will just choose a smaller size of your sample in the study. And another disadvantage is that your data is difficult to quantify, since you will just include what you have observed during the conduct of the study, so it will be very difficult for you to quantify those data. Another is it might be hard for you to gain entry to the research area, especially if the area is considered to be restricted or there will be issues of vulnerability. So it will be difficult for you to secure entry to the research locale. And another disadvantage is the lack of anonymity on the part of the researcher and of course on the part of the respondents, since you will be seeing them face to face, you will be mingling with them, so anonymity is difficult to obtain. Now, using this observation, there are some manner in which you're going to record the result of your study. One is through the use of checklist. So what is this checklist? This contains the items to be observed in a space for number or check mark for short verbal entries. So you can bring with you a checklist, or sometimes we call it observation guide. The second is the unstructured observation. This is where you, being the observer, does not hold any list of the items to be observed. This is usually used in participant observation. So, unlike the checklist, in an unstructured observation, you do not have or you are not holding any list of items to be observed. So you will just observe everything that goes in or goes out of the day-to-day living of your respondents. Then another is the controlled observation. So this is usually utilized in experimental studies or particularly done in laboratories. And the next one is the uncontrolled observation. This is usually utilized in natural setting, so no control is placed upon any variable in the observation area. Okay, that would be all class for the topics this morning. For your activity, just check in your work text for that part in your study. So, thank you for watching this video. See you next lesson.